Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portell, and I am recovering from being terribly sick, so thank you for bearing with me. We will be continuing with Binding 13 on Tuesday, so it's a short turnaround time, but I was super sick on Tuesday. And you can probably still hear it. You can probably still see it. I'm sorry. I've got a headache. My lights are off, so the lights are a little bit funky. Also, I've got Fig, my cat, is sleeping behind me. So I'll give you guys a little peek. If you're watching, you can see there's a little Fig behind me. So I'm taking today easy, and it was a good thing because even though a lot happens in these chapters, not a lot happens in these chapters. So we're gonna dive in. It's probably gonna be a quick episode, but thank you for being here. I love you guys so much, and I can't wait to dive into today's episode with you guys. Before we do that, here's how you can support and follow the podcast. You can follow anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can watch full video breakdowns on YouTube. You can get additional cultural information over on Substack, cultural analysis on Substack. I'm thinking about taking my Femme frame, which for episodes like this where they've been really long, and just using the Femme frame over there. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. So if you're wondering like where the Femme frame is going, some of that is happening over on the Substack. So go and check it out. If you want community, go and check that out on Patreon. You can get full video breakdowns there. And there's some daily prompts. Like on Tuesday, I did a hot take on The Last of Us and Lev being casted as a cis actress versus a trans actor. So if you have thoughts and feelings on that, you can go over on the Patreon. You'll still be able to get the full video breakdowns. You'll still be able to get the transcript, but that's more community focused. If you like both, subscribe to both. Not gonna hurt. Not gonna hurt me at least. And last but not least, you can always follow on Instagram and on TikTok. That is at Femme and Furious Pod. All right, let us dive into this stretch of chapters, starting with 31. I feel like we haven't been with our friends in so long because I was sick and I wasn't here on Tuesday. But starting with 31, chapter 31, Bitch Girls and Burger Breath. This is Johnny's POV. Here's the summary. Are there any other bars in town to drink at? Or is biddies the only option? A philosophical question that is not answered in this stretch of chapters as Gibbsy and Johnny find themselves drunk and surrounded by people from school, including, most importantly, Bella. As drinks flow, tempers rise, and the night escalates into a fight. Johnny and Cormac finally have their final girl showdown, with Cormac taking the emotional TKO, unbeknownst to him. Succumbing to the ultimate defeat, Johnny scarfs down half a dozen cheeseburgers. Yikes. And that's when Joey Lynch and Aoife pull up, offering him a ride home. Of course, where Johnny is, Gibbsy is never too far away, so the crew scoops up a drunk Gibbs, and off they all go to the Kavanaugh Manor. Johnny confesses that he has a soft spot for Shannon, winning some brownie points with Big Bro Joe. The night ends with Joey confronting Johnny about the fight that he had with Sierra's nameless boyfriend. Joey says goodbye, stating that Shannon needs a friend. That's it. Just a friend. Nothing more. Joey, my love, you are not thick. You know these two are already in capital LOVE. Say hello to your new brother-in-law, babe. All right, some important details from this chapter. There is a weird comment about Feely not coming out because something came up, and Johnny's like, that's not surprising. We don't really know much about him, even though he's like in our core friend group. So I don't know too much about Feely either. He's a really interesting character, and he has a really interesting connection to all of these people. We'll learn more about him as books go on. But from the top here, from this first Binding 13, this first introduction that we have to all of these characters, Feely's not really ingrained in the group in the same way that we get some of the other dynamics, which is fine. Not everybody can be the star of the show, especially when the book is supposed to be centered on Johnny and Shannon to begin with. But this comment about like, well, that's not really surprising, something came up, even though we are tracking things throughout the book. I'm going to keep a running list so that as we go through the books in the series, we can sort of call back to these moments of like, hey, what was happening there? Because if you've never read any of the other Boys of Tommen books, if this is like your first introduction to it, that's totally fine. But what you'll come to learn is that for the most part, the main story, the main part of the Boys of Tommen story is happening now in these couple of years of high school that we'll go through. Some people's history or their stories go further back. So sometimes we get like years before they were ever in Tommen, from like childhood and stuff like that. And of course, some of these characters have known each other since childhood, like Huey and Gibbsy and Liz and Claire and things like that. So sometimes we get stuff from childhood, but the main storyline is here, right? In high school, in these pivotal years of their life, in this coming of age story. There are times, because the central story is here, that as we are going through the different perspectives and the different pairings and the different friendships and different people are highlighted, sometimes you will see something that is happening off page for us in this story, but will be front and center on page in their story. So, for example, in this stretch of chapters, Joey leaves. He leaves Shannon at Johnny's house. And in Joey's books, we learn what he's doing. We learn what's happening. So, you'll get more information from these characters as stories evolve, even from different perspectives. So I just want to clock what's happening with characters that we're not spending a ton of time with in this book, and maybe come back to them as we continue on this Boys of Tommen journey, as we go through different books in the series, as we make our way towards, the TV show and the release of the TV show. We'll have covered all the books, hopefully, at that point in the series. So we'll have many different perspectives going into the TV show when it releases. In this chapter as well, in chapter 31, we learn a lot about Huey without really spending too much time with him as a character as well. So he's someone like Johnny that I would say has a lot of integrity. That's something that I would say is like integral to this person. He's got a lot of honor and a lot of pride. And they all do, by the way. They all have a lot of integrity and pride. But I would say, as far as like characters who really display that and honor that, are Johnny and Huey. They come up a lot as these like characters with a lot of moral, ethical weight on their shoulders as leading men. And the comment about, Johnny acknowledging that Huey is not filling Katie up with drinks. Who, Katie, by the way, is 16, is his girlfriend. I just think that that's like one of these really subtle ways that we get a lot about Huey's character without having to spend a ton of time with the character. So he's somebody who, not only does Johnny know, is like obsessed with his girlfriend and has told Johnny like, hey, she's a little insecure, and Johnny being like, well, I'm not going to bring that up, but I will do what I can to offset any of that for her. These like little moments shared between the two of them, like brothers, like teammates. They respect each other. They care about each other. But the way that Johnny then says, like, he doesn't fill her up with drink. Like, he doesn't need to get her drunk. He doesn't even want to get her drunk, to his benefit, I think is just like one of those really very telling lines. That's sort of a throwaway line in the chapter, but tells you a lot about Huey and who he is. Johnny says that they show up to the bar, him and Gibbs. So mind you, when we ended last episode, Johnny and Gibbs were already at home drinking whiskey, playing video games. Gibbs essentially gets Johnny drunk and is like, let's go out, let's go have a good night. And so Johnny says they show up to the bar, or at least Johnny shows up to the bar, 3 drinks past tipsy. So he's already drunk, okay? And then immediately takes 6 shots. This is insane to me. I saw this and I was like, this is an Irish stigma right here, that they're just like knocking back all of these drinks. Literally just insane. And they continue to drink. It's not even like he takes 6 shots and then he just like chills out for an hour. And I know Johnny's big and he's tall and muscular and whatever, but this is just truly one of those things that I saw that he's like, I took 2 shots and then I took 4 more for good measure. And I was like, if I took 6 shots right now, I don't drink, so this is also not helpful. But if I took 6 shots right now, I'd be dead. I'd have alcohol poisoning. I would need to go to the hospital. So amazing to these kids that they don't have alcohol poisoning or don't need to get taken to the hospital. Johnny then says that Wicked Twisted Road from Reckless Kelly is playing. He's trying to listen to the lyrics, and he says, the song reminds me of Shannon. If you've never looked at the lyrics to the song or you've never heard the song, this song is all about first love. So the fact that this song reminds him of Shannon is just like this, additional nod that he's falling in love with her, that this is his first love, and that's what he's experiencing, this deep, encompassing feeling. And it's not a particularly beautiful song. I mean, the song is called Wicked Twisted Road, and the way that the singer, is describing this relationship that he had at 17, this wicked, twisted love, that it's not this beautiful, loving thing, that it's sort of dark and twisted and sinful and all these other things that encompass certainly the depth that you can feel when you're in that experience of having first love for the first time. Sort of the Romeo Juliet aspect of it, you know, and thus with a kiss I die. Very tragic kind of experience of first love. This is also the first time that Johnny says this one's for keeps, which is going to be one of our sort of like book boyfriend mottos that Johnny says. This one's for keeps, and he means it. This is something that's like stuck in his head, can't get it out. And he goes on to say, not even just this one's for keeps, but you could love this girl your whole life if you just let yourself. So he knows that he is sort of the one that's drawing the lines in the sand. And this is something that Gibbs will say to him in the very last chapter that we'll look at today, where Gibbs says to him, like, these lines that you're creating about not being with Shannon are your own imaginary lines that you're putting there. So he knows it because in his drunk stupor right now, he's saying, if you just let yourself, you could love her your whole life. And speaking of Gibbsy, by the way, is it time for me to tell you how much I love him? He's my favorite character. He is so perceptive. In this fight with Cormac, he calls out all of the underlying bullshit that's happening between all of these characters. He calls out the fact that Cormac basically comes up to them when they're drunk. Johnny is fucked up at this point. He can't even stand straight. So he's like, you're trying to start shit with Johnny so that Johnny fucks up his contract. That's the lowdown of it. And not only that, but then he acknowledges that he, Gibbsy, has no contract, that he's not under such obligations, and that he's going to step in to fight for Johnny because he doesn't have to keep his reputation clean. What's the difference? Do we condone violence on this podcast? No, obviously we don't. I am a pacifist at heart. Truly, genuinely, I am. But do we love Gibbsy and men who are perceptive, emotionally intelligent, and the relationships that they have fighting for their friends? Yes. So Johnny then, decides me and Cormac are going to finally have this out. Great. They go outside. Cormac starts squaring up, like, to have a fight with Johnny, and Johnny's like, bro, I'm not gonna fight you. Number one, it's not worth it to him. Even if in his drunken state, he knows that. Number two, he goes out to point to Cormac like, you betrayed me. All you had to do was pick up the phone. If you liked her, if you had feelings for her, and you told me that, I would have backed off simply because you asked me to, because I respect you, because we're teammates, we're friends, we play together. Third of all, you're saying that you want to like hash things out and you want to make things good between us, but you decide that the time to do this wasn't months ago when you started sleeping with Bella, but right now when we're all drunk and we're, out at a bar, not thinking clearly. And so he calls Cormac out, and then he basically says, like, I don't have a problem with you. I don't have a problem with Bella. Keep her away from my girlfriend and we're cool. And Cormac's like, but you don't have a girlfriend. So I'm confused here. And he kind of like recovers and he's like, keep her away from me and keep her away from Shannon. So he has this like Freudian slip and he is like, but also she has threatened Shannon. And if she makes good on those threats to Shannon, if she does anything to Shannon, I'm coming for you. And Cormac's like, why are you coming for me? And he's like, I can't hit Bella. She's a girl. So I'm going to fuck you up instead. So you better keep her in check because you're going to need to, because she's a handful and all she's after is your goddamn money. And you're not going to have any because you're not as good as me. And Cormac's like, you think you're better than me. And he's like, I am better than you. And if you want to be as good as me, if you want to take this opportunity at the academy and actually make it into the U20s or make it onto, the senior team, then like work out harder, be better, and like don't lose your head over a girl like this. So part of this conversation that they're having, which I think is really interesting, is this idea of like, what is girlfriend material and like what's not girlfriend material? What makes a girl worth it and what makes a girl not worth it? And to Johnny, who has a future in professional rugby ahead of him, the path is pretty much cleared. He looks at somebody like Bella and he's like, that girl's a bottom feeder. She doesn't want to be in a relationship with you for you. She doesn't love you. Look at you. She's making a display of you to get at me, to get a rise out of me. Like, that's the girl that you're with. She doesn't love you. She doesn't care about you. And he's not really doing that for Cormac's benefit either. He doesn't really care. But he's like bringing up this idea of like what makes a girl worth it. And even if we can see that that's true, and even if we know that that's what's happening between Cormac and Bella, and that's what Bella's intentions are, if that's what they are, because we don't really know, because we really don't spend any time with Bella outside of these very skewed in perspective conversations that we have about her and around her from Johnny's POV, at least for now. So to somebody like Cormac, is Bella girlfriend material? Where somebody might look at Shannon and be like, more than one person has said that Shannon is pretty and Shannon's a looker, but she has no curves. She's said to herself, like, I'm like a prepubescent boy. So she's got no curves. She's got a fucked up family life. She's can't ever go out. She barely has a cell phone. So many people would look at Shannon and be like, Johnny, what are you doing? You have this path cleared for you. And that's the girl that you're considering girlfriend material when she comes from this fucked up background with this fucked up family. She's got no money. She's got no prospects, right? Like, to somebody else, Shannon's not worth it. And to Johnny, she's worth everything. So I just like thought this conversation between Cormac and Johnny about like what makes somebody girlfriend material is really an interesting conversation. And also like the idea of Bella's autonomy around the situation. I know that that's not necessarily what Johnny believes. I know that Johnny has addressed Bella directly about these issues, but the fact that Bella's honor is something that Cormac feels that he has to defend, or the fact that Bella's mistakes are a price that Cormac has to pay, the fact that, you know, there's an expectation that somebody like Bella will fuck somebody like Johnny over, but that he holds his teammate to a higher standard, even though Bella's the one he was sleeping with for 8 months, you know? And then for him to say, like, I've had lots and lots and lots of sex. Okay, Johnny. Or, you know, you never just put your dick in a girl. That's not how that happens. Like, it doesn't just slip and fall in. And Cormac, like, wakes up from the spell almost and is like, shit, you're right. We didn't just start sleeping together. It wasn't like this mistake. It didn't just happen. So the accountability also of, you know, the magnitude of sex between these teenage boys, I thought was a really interesting conversation that they were having. Johnny then leaves. His friends have left. He is ready to go home. He goes to the chipper. He gets half a dozen burgers, some curry chips, and scarfs them down. And he hears, Johnny Kavanaugh, is that you? And his first thought in his drunken head is, fan or friend or fan. Like, he doesn't know if people are calling out to him because they personally know him, or if they're calling out to him because they've watched him on the senior team and they feel like they are owed something because they live in the same town as him. So the fact that Johnny even has to think this way, this drunk, is just so telling of how far-reaching his celebrity goes. So even when we're in Shannon's POV, or when we're in school and people are used to it because we're with the rugby team and they know that this is Johnny's MO, or we're with people at school and they've been, you know, living in Johnny's little bubble for however long, or with Shannon and she doesn't know who he is at all. Like, these little tells about, you know, the extent of Johnny's fame is really, really interesting. Now, Drunken Johnny is in capital Love. I said it in the summary. I'm saying it again with Shannon. This is like his thoughts about her as Joey is going on and on and on is so interesting. He like can't stop thinking about Shannon, every which way, but in a loving way, in a romantic way, in a sexual way, like just every which way, he's got something on his mind about Shannon. Now, also in this chapter, we get Johnny's birthday, which is May 31st, 1987. So Johnny is a Gemini sun, a Cancer moon, and either a Leo or a Virgo rising, though I'm leaning towards a Virgo because of the depth of his perfectionism, though Leo would fit a little bit too because he's like the star of the show. Do you guys like astrology content? Because this is like my full-time job. So if you guys want full chart breakdowns, I was thinking that we could maybe do them over on the Patreon. So if you're interested in like full chart breakdowns, I'm going to put a poll up on the Patreon with this episode. Go and vote on it. And if you guys want like character charts, we can 100% do them. Chapter 32, Days Off and Demon Brothers, Shannon POV. Shannon and Joey wake up to a house full of groceries, 143 euros worth to be precise, Aoife gone with the boys, and Joey's money split into budgeted envelopes. She also, much to Joey's dismay, has left 20 euros of pocket money for Joey and Shannon to go get breakfast, insisting that Shannon is too skinny. Before leaving, Joey offers Shannon 2 gifts, one from him and one for Aoife for her Sweet 16, a CD and a bottle of designer perfume. The two head out to breakfast when, bring, bring, Johnny's phone, lost in his drunken stupor, starts to ring endlessly in the back seat, with King Clit calling him. Deciding to detour, Joey and Shannon head to Johnny's house to hand-deliver the phone. Now, one thing I love about Aoife, again, we don't spend a ton of time with Aoife in this book. We're already like more than halfway through the book, but Aoife is a matriarch, and Joey doesn't know how to cope with this kind of thoughtfulness and kindness. And Joey, which we know from spending so much time with Shannon, Joey is a patriarch. They all in their house look to Joey as a father figure. I just love how well suited Joey and Aoife are. And again, we haven't spent much time with them. Like, we get to know them much more in their own books. This, like, concept of them being so nurturing, or, like, the head of a household. And Aoife's not the head of her household. Like, that's not her role in her house. But the fact that she can step in and take some of this burden off of Joey, and recognizing that Shannon is a helper, and Shannon's willing to pitch in, and Shannon's willing to step up, but Shannon's not a matriarch. Shannon doesn't possess this gene, this assertiveness that Aoife has, where Aoife sees a problem, she wants to tackle it head on, and she doesn't want to leave Joey hanging by himself. And the way that they can come together to support his family in this like incredible time of need. So the fact that Aoife gets up early, goes and gets groceries, spends her own money, a fortune, according to, Joey and Shannon, 143 euros, which is is a lot of money, but is providing them so much more. And then is it's also Shannon's birthday, so here's a gift. It's also Shannon's birthday, so here's $20 and go get breakfast together. Why don't the two of you just enjoy a day off? I'm going to take the boys. I'm going to be responsible for them for the next couple of hours so that you guys can have a break. Maybe you deal with just way too much. And the way that Joey is I don't really know how to cope with this. And Shannon is trying to tease him about it. She's like, look, there's little hearts and she loves you. That's what's going on here. That's what this is. So just the respective roles that people will take in their household. And I really love this idea of Shannon not being a matriarch. Shannon has a lot of qualities that can be quite nurturing, and Shannon has a lot of qualities that can be quite domestic in a feminine context, if that's how we want to skew it, which we'll talk about some of that today. But she's not this warm, loving matriarch. She's certainly warm, she's certainly loving, but she doesn't possess that thing that takes for you to be the matriarch. She's in the maiden. She's the maiden. We have 0 crones. Maybe Nanny is the crone, but we haven't met Nanny. So I don't know. I just love that Shannon's not put into this role of matriarch, that she's a helper, that she's somebody who's willing to stand by Joey's side and really support him, but that Joey is a patriarch, and the person that counters that is actually his partner, Aoife. It's also so depressing how she's so overcome by getting 2 gifts for her birthday, presuming that Joey has been the one to give her a gift every other year, and how embarrassed Joey is that this is all he can afford to get her. Is just really touching their relationship to me, and I will love Joey forever. He is the love of my life. Shannon also doesn't want to answer the phone when they realize that it's Johnny's phone. She's so afraid that Johnny's going to think that they stole it. And these subtle ways that class and the discrepancy of their class differences comes up between Johnny and Shannon. In last episode, during those chapters, that Johnny gives Shannon his wallet. He's like, go pay for the soup that we just had and head out to the car, okay? And she's like, you can count the money, I'm not going to be offended. And Johnny's like, I would just never fucking do that. I didn't assume that you were stealing my money. So, the real class differences between them is something that's so overt in the way that it's described, in the way that it's explored. And Shannon doesn't want to answer the phone because she thinks that Johnny will think that they stole the phone. And even then, she tries to delegate the task to Joey. She's been so conditioned to be conflict avoidant, to be invisible, to just cause no problems at all, ever, that she doesn't want to have this conversation with Johnny for myriad reasons. And so that brings us to the end of this chapter. We then go into 33. King Clit is a liability, Johnny's POV. Good news, Gibbsy found the phone. Better news, it's being hand-delivered by Shannon. And now for the bad news, Gibbsy is cooking. Though Gibbsy cooking comes with a few Shannon anecdotes, which is quite pleasing to Johnny, specifically about how she saved Brian. When Joey the Hurler walks in, Johnny notices the bruise under his eye, and you would think that alarm bells would start to be ringing, but Johnny hasn't put all the pieces together yet. Joey takes over making breakfast because he is our zaddy, and he asks Johnny to go grab Shannon from the car. In this chapter, Gibbsy says, one of my favorite quotes, "Shit, Cav, I was wrong. This fucker right here is the daddy." And he's talking about Joey, who is so used to playing this role. He is so hyper independent. He is so used to caretaking, so used to being the one to take over when things aren't going well, that instead of just letting Gibbsy fumble his way through it, he's like, I'm getting a free breakfast out of this. No way I'm letting you fuck it up. I'm cooking the bacon the way that I like. I'm cooking breakfast the way that I like, because this is important to me and I know how to do it and you don't know how to do it and you're gonna fuck it up. So there's so many different levels and layers to why Joey takes over. But again, this idea of Joey being the patriarch and Joey being somebody that can nurture and cook and do things for himself, in some ways is a subversion of the typical gender roles, because most of the time this would be delegated to somebody like Shannon, for example, and yet Joey is the one that takes over. And this sort of idea in Joey Lynch of what defines a patriarch outside of the scope of patriarchy. So if Teddy is a prime example of a system of patriarchy that is failing, meaning somebody who's cheating the system to drink and gamble and get money and whatever, but also somebody who, even if he was failing within the system, was doing right by his kids, would be considered the system would be the patriarchy and he would be considered a good patriarch, right? However, Teddy is this example of is failed by the system and is failing in the system, and also is failing as a father and a husband. Whereas Joey is working, to what degree we don't really know, but he has a job. He plays semi-professional hurling. He's going to school. And then he's caretaking for his family outside of that, sometimes to the point where it's financially. So, what makes a patriarch outside of the scope of patriarchy, and how does it set somebody up like Joey to either fail or succeed, whereas it's already failing Teddy and he's failing within the system and the role. So it's just something really interesting to follow for Joey's journey, because he is this prime example of patriarch. Joey then says, bro, go check on my sister. Hey, Caps, will you go check on my sister? And Joey at this point knows, Shannon's kind of crushing on him, and he's like, you do with him what you will. I told you what's going to happen with him. He's leaving for the summer. If that's what you want to do with him, you do you. I'm not that kind of brother. So he's kind of trying to set Shannon up right now. He's like, Cabs, go check on Shannon. She's out in the car. Johnny gets immediately angry. He's like, why would you leave her in the car? And he's like, duh, she don't want to come in. She's embarrassed. So I just love Joey in the way that he approaches life with this sort of fuck all attitude. And truthfully, Joey doesn't have another fuck to give about anything else. So he's doing what's best for Shannon right now, though. He doesn't push her when she doesn't want to be pushed. He knows that she's just as stubborn as he is. So he's like, you do you. But he does the next best thing, which is sending Johnny out to her, because he knows that that's going to sort of butter her up and they'll have their own moment. And Johnny is like, he didn't need to ask me twice or give me permission once, for that matter. And I love this line so much. I almost put it down as my favorite for the quote later, but I didn't. Love this. Chapter 34. Mauled by dogs and feelings. Shannon's POV. We interrupt this doom spiral to bring you dogs. They will regulate your nervous system. Shannon might be a mess, but she can't turn away from Johnny's all too knowing gaze, having to lie to him when he inevitably spots the bruises on her face after ripping his dogs off of her. But Johnny has a nose for bullshit, and he calls Shannon out on the well-rehearsed line that she gives him. Johnny agrees not to push if Shannon will come inside. Shannon observes the natural friendship developing between Gibbs, Johnny, and Joey, and little does she know that the relationship between them will be fucking precious to me because I love Joey Lynch so much. Anyways, Joey and Gibbs gang up on Shannon, telling her that she smells after being mauled by dogs, and insist that she takes a shower in Johnny's ensuite bathroom. What could go wrong? Some important details from this chapter. As honorable as it is that Johnny wants to help Shannon, his inability to leave well enough alone. He has to approach it in this forceful way. That's all he knows how to do. He is meeting her trauma with his own anger about her trauma. And part of that is just because Johnny's trauma has led him to be angry. Okay, we haven't talked a lot about Johnny's anger this chapters. I know you're like, Julia, give it a break. I am. For just this little today. For today, okay? We're not going to talk too much about it. But what I think is really important here is to acknowledge that what's stopping her from trusting him with this information is the way that Johnny meets the problem. Johnny continues to meet this problem that he has over where Shannon is getting these bruises after he has crossed lines and boundaries that she has not asked him to cross, that he then meets the frustration of her being like, I tripped and fell on a Lego. Whether he believes the line or not, he meets that moment with anger and aggression and frustration. He can't help it. That's just like who he is. And I don't know what the right approach is, because somebody like Claire would not buy that line either, but also would maybe give her a knowing look, or maybe would make a comment that was much more subtle, but knows not to push. Or Shannon can even say to her, please don't push this. Like, please just leave this alone. So she's getting these different responses from people who are clearly in her orbit that know something is going on. Okay? Claire seems to have a better sense of what's going on than Johnny, but Johnny obviously is not obtuse. He sees the bruises on her face and he's like, who did this to you? And he gets so frustrated. And I don't know what the right thing is, because on one hand, people like Claire are doing their best to abide by Shannon's wishes and not push, and that's keeping Shannon stuck in the cycle. By not saying anything and by it not coming out, in a more public sense, is keeping Shannon stuck instead of safe. And I know that Shannon does not perceive it that way, but that's the truth, right? Johnny meeting this with frustration, though, is never going to work on somebody like Shannon, because she's used to mitigating people's anger. She's used to being met with anger. This is nothing new to her. So if he met it with gentility, and she even says at one point, he touched my bruise so gently, I shivered, not because of the pain of it, but because it was so tender of him to do it like this. He may get further with Shannon, because to Shannon, anger and frustration is nothing new. And obviously, Johnny doesn't know that. But when you realized 5 or 6 times that ramming your head against this wall isn't getting you anywhere, Johnny, maybe you just let yourself go into that tender mode and see where that takes you with her. And I will give him the benefit of the doubt, some credit, because later in these chapters, he does try different approaches and he acknowledges that he needs to take a different approach with her. But this initial, like, who did this to you? I know that we love a book boyfriend who did that, but like, honestly, Johnny, at this point, she doesn't want to tell you. She hasn't told you, and there's a reason why she hasn't told you. And I wish he would just respect that instead of feeling like he needs to push and fix it. We also get mentioned in this chapter of Darina Allen, who is an Irish chef and food journalist, so you should go look up some of her work. Maybe we'll cook a recipe of hers over in the Patreon. Should we do that? Should we cook a Darina Allen recipe over on Patreon together as one of our live events for our Sunday brunch, okay, let me know. Shannon also feels guilty. She's like, it kind of annoys me that Joey makes friends with Johnny and Gibbs so easily, and then immediately is like, nothing comes easy to Joey. You know, that's like such an unfair thing for me to say. He's just trying to survive like the rest of us. But this feeling that she has of like the social connections that Joey can forge because he was not bullied, and the fact that this is so difficult for her and she feels so awkward forging these connections, even more awkward because she has like romantic feelings for Johnny, is such a self-aware feeling. And I love that Shannon is able to be so self-aware about it and then immediately in the next breath course correct and be like, that's also not true. I realize that I'm having feelings right now. This is not Joey's fault. This is like my own thing. All right, 35. Answers, Johnny. When Johnny can't get answers from Shannon, he decides to confront Joey about why Shannon is always decorated with bruises. Joey does some interrogating of his own, wanting to know why Johnny is pressing for answers and what did Shannon tell him anyways. Joey remains unnervingly, perhaps even preternaturally, if we were in a fantasy novel, calm, considering that Joey throws out some wild accusations, one being that Joey is her attacker. Joey tells Johnny to earn Shannon's trust. That's the only thing that he can do. And that as her brother, he will not betray Shannon by spilling her dirty little secrets. Joey gets a phone call then from his father, informing him that his mother had a miscarriage and Joey is needed at home. So he leaves Shannon in Johnny's care until he can come and pick her up. Important details from this chapter. Joey being relieved in this phone call that he's having with his dad that there won't be another baby, and the complicated emotions that all of the people involved are probably sifting through. You know, the fact that his dad would even ask him, like, aren't you sad? Whether he was asking him in a frustrated tone and being like, what is this conversation we're having? Aren't you sad that she lost the baby? Joey just straight up, very directly being like, I'm relieved that she's not having this baby, is so telling of the cycle of trauma and abuse that everyone in this situation is involved in. Also, once again, something that happens a lot in this book is men discussing women like they have no autonomy. So when Cormac and Johnny have the conversation about Bella as if Bella's not somebody that has her own autonomy and doesn't make her own decisions, as if Johnny has not had multiple conversations with Bella. I mean, I know Johnny doesn't treat her that way, but the conversations that men have together about the women in their lives or the women that are around them, this conversation about Shannon that Joey and Johnny are having, and the fact that like Joey can't just wait 10 minutes for Shannon to get out of the shower to check in with Shannon to see what the fuck she wants to do. I don't know if that's like Joey just being like, it's my sister's birthday, she's got a crush on this guy. He acknowledges in this chapter to Johnny, he's like, you like Shannon. He's like, you maybe even more than like Shannon. You might even love Shannon. And Johnny's like, I can't bullshit this guy. That's her brother. So he doesn't try to play it off like he does when he's with Gibbs or the other people from the rugby team. He's just like, yeah, I've got fucking feelings for her. So like, what's going on? So whether that is just Joey deciding that this is a person of prominent status with clearly a lot of money based off of their manner of a home who can take care of my sister for a day and give her a nice birthday. I don't know if that's what he's thinking because it's never explicitly said from Joey in this chapter. Or whether it's the fact that he doesn't want to drag Shannon home in the middle of a shitstorm on her birthday or just in general. I don't really know. But Johnny's like, she's not a package. You can't just like pick her up and like deliver her somewhere. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about her like this? So I do like that Johnny mentions that like, hey, you're talking about Shannon like she's not a person. I just wish that they weren't talking around Shannon as if Shannon wasn't a person who could make her own choices or might have an opinion or a say about what's going on here. Put a pin in that because it's going to bleed over into next chapter, okay? 36. Bad news, Shannon's POV. A freshly showered Shannon gets to experience the euphoric feeling of putting on your boyfriend's clothing. And for this, we applaud. A freshly clothed Shannon gets to discover the euphoric feeling of realizing the boy that she likes keeps their picture under his bed. And oh hey, speaking of the bed, what's that? Is it a ghost? Is it a demonic ex-girlfriend? Nope, it's just Suki, Johnny's old dog, chilling in the bed, living to scare the shit out of Shannon. Coming down from the adrenaline rush, Johnny tells Shannon that Joey left because their mom had a miscarriage, and overcome with fear and grief and raging hormones, Shannon breaks down and Johnny, steadfast and true, holds her through it. So let's pick up the pin. Johnny right away gives Shannon an option while stating what he wants. So like, I will take you home if that's what you want, but I want you to stay here. So I just love that that's like the first thing that he does. He's like, I'm gonna give you the choice. If that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do. Whatever you want to do is what we'll do, but I want you to stay here. Shannon is also acutely aware of their social differences. And while it seems like, compared even to like the peers at Tommen, that Johnny has more money than like most of his peers at Tommen, Shannon doesn't compare to the peers at all. Like, Shannon going to Tommen is a fish swimming upstream. This is not her comfort zone. She was excited to get a CD, something that probably cost $20, $25 from Joey, and a bottle of perfume. And had Aoife not been around, she would have just gotten the CD. So this is a luxury for her, when a CD is a luxury item for Shannon, when their family is budgeting on Marie and Joey's wages, and Joey is only working part-time. So Johnny just having casually things to spare, things in excess, designer underwear, Nike socks. This is also a level of safety and stability that Johnny possesses, that he has, that he comes from. He comes from a stable home life with two loving parents. He doesn't have siblings. He's been supported as he pursues his dream and his career, and not just supported by his family, but his friends, his community, his school, right? So everyone is supporting Johnny. Everyone is looking out for Johnny. Everyone knows who Johnny is and is clapping him on the back. He's gifted at school. He's got friends in excess. He's likable, right? And on top of all of that, he's got money. He doesn't have to worry about anything. He's never had to worry about money a day in his life. He's probably never known what it's like to go without a meal. So him and Shannon do possess a lot of differences, and this is like another level of stability that he has that Shannon will just never know, and that when she's around him, things that are so natural for him, where he's like, that's not dinner, that was a bowl of soup, but for Shannon, this big bowl of soup, she's like, that's the most I've probably eaten all week, maybe even all month, so the fact that something that Johnny takes for granted or doesn't think too much about because it's just his normal is so abnormal to Shannon that it's just like another thing that draws her to Johnny, even though she's not looking at Johnny as a meal ticket, even though she's really not thinking about how much money he's going to be making from rugby. Like, that's really not anything that goes on in her mind. We know that because we're in her mind for half the book. She is acutely aware of their social differences, and being in his house is like a level of comfort where she can just start to decompress. And we see her, as these chapters go on, just like slowly start decompressing from all of the stress that she's carrying, because here with Johnny and in his house, they don't need anything. They don't need to want for anything. They are not unsafe in any way. I also just love this like girl logic, this girl math logic that Shannon has going on. So she's like, your vagina in his boxer shorts, which were surely washed because they do laundry in their household, your vagina touching something that his penis has once touched is practically like having sex with him. I laughed so hard at this. This is like just such like teenage girl math. And then she gets frightened by Suki in the bed. She doesn't know what it is. She immediately goes from 0 to 100. Like, how quickly she shifts from a normal level of panic, which is like, I have to wear Johnny's clothes. I'm not even 5 feet tall. Johnny is over 6 feet tall. Like, nothing fits me. Holy shit. So like normal panic mode, like normal teenage awkward girl things that are happening, and the acknowledgement of your body, and you have a crush on somebody and whatever, to like immediate survival mode that she goes into, the spike of adrenaline, the fear, the shock, the way that she falls over herself, she hurts herself. She's like, I scraped my chin. I didn't even think about that. I just got right back up and try to like scramble out the door, is also really telling of the level of abuse that she's tolerated in her household, that when she gets scared, it's not even like a normal level of rationale that she can bring to being scared. She immediately goes from 0 to 100. Johnny then comes in, he calms her down, he introduces her to Suki, and he tells her, you know, your mother had a miscarriage. And Shannon is like, feel something, feel something. So Shannon pleading with herself to feel something, but is obviously just another part of the abuse cycle that they're in. Shannon has said earlier in this book that if she wasn't already pregnant, that she would have been after her and her father made up during one of their many fights. And she says this when she's like, my father came back promising heaven and delivers hell. One of the best lines in the book. For Shannon and Joey, this is just another person to protect when they think about this baby. This is just another mouth to feed when they're already starving. Their mother has been having kids since she was 16, and she's in her 40s at this point. She's been having children for 23 years because that's how old Darren is. So she's been living in this cycle for years and years where they probably fight. She kicks him out, right? He comes back, they fucking make up, she gets pregnant. You know, now it's just another part of the cycle. Now it's just another kid. Now it's just adding to the chain of trauma. And, you know, there's 3 kids under Shannon and 4 under Joey. So they're both numb to this news about their mother having a miscarriage because in their reality, pregnancy isn't a blessing. A pregnancy is just another burden on top of an already shitty situation. So I just love that she has to like tell herself, like, you should feel something. This makes you a bad person, that you aren't upset about this. And maybe it does and maybe it doesn't, but we don't really know how Marie even feels about this. And I know from my own experience, like this will just be a very light conversation about this right now. We can go into this much deeper at another time when it's not going to be a bajillion hour long episode. But I miscarried 6 years ago. And even though it was one of the most difficult things I've ever experienced in my entire life, I literally think about it, not every day anymore, but like I used to think about it all the time where I was like, had the same feeling of like relief, like, whoa, my life would have been so different. I didn't want to get pregnant. I wasn't trying. And I could have been stuck with that person for the rest of my life. Not the baby, but the person that I got pregnant with. So, you know, all things aside, like miscarrying, being pregnant in general, like it just brings up a lot of feelings. And when you miscarry, there's a lot of feelings around your own experience of femininity, your experience of mortality, your experience around your feelings about motherhood and how you are nurturing and your life, like just so many different things. And for these people who are sharing the burden of a pregnancy in their home, where Joey is the one to take the beating because he's going to stand in front of his mother so that she doesn't get hurt. You know, the fact that Shannon is the one that's putting them to bed, that is making their meals, that Joey's the one that's driving them around and working his ass off to have $73 to get them from one week to the next week, you know, is a part of the cycle for them too, in the way that they're just trying to survive, in the way that they're trying to do the best for their brothers that they can. And this is just like another burden for the 2 of them if their mother actually had this baby. And for all of his anger issues, to which there are many, Johnny never shies away from doing the hard thing. And the hard thing was telling Shannon the truth and then holding her when she asks to be held. And I love that Johnny is just very, very direct. Shannon wants an ounce of his strength, and Johnny's persistence paired with this like new life that she's discovering at Tommen. And by persistence, I mean like Johnny's reassurance that he's somebody she can rely on and that he's going to be there for her, you know, plus this, you know, new experience of making friends and feeling safe at Tommen, and her grades are getting so much better and her life is flourishing. And then this like new self that she's stepping into, this is helping her break out of the cycle of abuse. So this is important. 37. It's your birthday. Shannon's POV. The way to a woman's heart is through her stomach, obviously. Johnny Kavanaugh. I formally induct you to the Girl Dinner Hall of Fame for making a classic girl dinner of grilled cheese, cereal, and tea. Johnny and Shannon chat. They become more friendly. They start to deepen their bond. When Shannon tells Johnny that today's her birthday, surprise, Johnny is very displeased, being unprepared for Shannon's birthday. But the two end up cozying up on the couch, watching rugby before Shannon falls asleep. Important details from this chapter. Shannon says that domestic chores like cooking and, cleaning the house all get delegated to her. And when Johnny's like, well, why? She's like, because I'm the only girl. So these things that are considered to be feminine, that are supposed to be like a girl's responsibility per the patriarchy, again, Teddy being a symbol of the cycle of the patriarchy in this story, and forcing her to perpetuate gender roles in their household, because that's Teddy's perspective of gender and what it is to be a woman, is to serve men and to be home and to be domesticated. To take that and then to also take into consideration that Joey, as the patriarch of the house, is the one that has to be the financial provider, the one that has to do the physical protecting of the people in the house, which is ironic considering that Marie and Teddy have these sort of like subverted gender roles where Marie is expected to protect and to provide, and Teddy does nothing. Teddy gambles away their money, he drinks, he beats them. Like, he has no functional role in their family other than causing fear and getting their mom pregnant. Johnny's basically like, that's some sexist bullshit. My mother would never stand for that. And Shannon is thrilled by this. Shannon likes that Johnny does not just see her value to him placed in this like patriarchal domestic ability that she could provide for him. In the same way that Johnny is quite pleased that Shannon doesn't look at him as a meal ticket. So they like really love that the other person doesn't prescribe these like conventional gender roles on top of them. And this is going to free Shannon up in particular to explore so much more of herself and discover so much more of her confidence in who she is outside of these prescribed roles that she's been given, especially within her household. And Shannon is quite indirect. I've talked about this before, and Johnny is very, very direct. Shannon says everything with this like level of unsurety or dancing around something. And she has to do this because she's used to blowback. So she's used to dancing around things. She can't be so direct about things. She can't be so direct about her feelings, because when she's done that in the past, her father is going to force her to pay for that emotionally and mostly physically. So she asks this like kind of question, like she wants to feel out what Johnny's situation is with Bella, but she can't just say like, well, what about Bella? So she says, I'm sure you bring like tons of girls here and your parents are used to this. And Johnny's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, no. And she's like, well, what about Bella? So she kind of does say it directly, but she comes about it, sideways. And then she's like, I thought you kind of had a thing with her. She goes about it in this sort of like directly but indirect kind of way. She sort of takes the long way there because she wants to make herself as small as possible. She says that being invisible basically procures safety for her. And so she doesn't want to leave a mess in Johnny's house, because leaving a mess would insinuate that she was there, and being there and being seen, not being visible, is what keeps her safe. She doesn't want to be fussed over on her birthday with the food, like anything like that. She doesn't want to pick something to watch because all of those things would normally cause her all of this backlash at home. To the deepest extent of this, she waits to eat before Johnny eats. Like, she waits for Johnny to take a bite. She's not even confident enough to eat her food first when she's hungry. And she's like, I devoured it. She's so hungry. She hasn't eaten. Mind you, they were going out for breakfast. So she hasn't probably eaten since the night before, if she ate the night before at all. She then like says, Johnny puts his feet up on the table. So I tried to put my feet up on the table, but I couldn't. So Johnny pulled the table in closer and I was embarrassed. And then like a minute later, when I wouldn't put my feet up, he physically puts my feet up on the table for me. So she's, you know, really embarrassed about having needs or wants. And Johnny is really good at either directly giving him to her or like reading what she wants, like wants to put her feet up on the table, but she can't read, so she's embarrassed. And then like puts her feet up anyway, because he's like, you don't have to be embarrassed, just put your feet up, you know? So I love this relationship that we see between like, there's a lot of caretaking that happens between Johnny and Shannon that I think is really, really lovely. And you can tell because she falls asleep. So she kind of curls up into Johnny. She falls asleep. She's like, I can't even keep my eyes open. And this is like true. We maybe even talked about this on this podcast before. But when you are with somebody who makes you feel safe, when you are with a person who helps you get out of your head and puts your body into that rest digest mode, lets your parasympathetic nervous system take over, and you're able to draw on their sense of calm, you get tired. So like people will be like, well, I get tired around my partner. Like that's actually a good thing because it means that your partner is making you feel safe enough to decompress from all of the stress that your body is holding on to. And for Shannon, we know that that's a lot. So that brings us to chapter 38. She's so lovely. Johnny. This just in. Johnny is angry, shocker, shocker, desperate to know what's happening to Shannon, and only gets angrier when Joey Lynch pulls up to retrieve Shannon. Dismayed, all he can do is stare at Shannon and Joey as they leave, feeling a sense of dread and a desire to keep her close and keep her safe. Important details. Johnny has this feeling that like, if I return Shannon to Joey and her proper place at her home, she'll come back with another bruise. So somewhere in his mind, in his subconscious, he knows that the harm is coming from her home. He can't get over the bullying thing because he read her file, but he knows somewhere inside because he's like, I know if I give her back right now, and it's a weekend, okay? It's Sunday. He's like, I know if I give her back right now, Monday morning, she's showing up with a fucking bruise. So he knows somewhere inside that it's coming from home. Then Joey says, my mom needs help with the kids, meaning that's why Shannon has to come back with me. And whether this is the truth or something to say just to like have an excuse on why Shannon needs to come home. But it's just like kind of fucked up that this is Shannon's responsibility, that their mom needs help with the kids. Even though it's not fucked up that the mom would need help with kids after having a miscarriage. It's fucked up that the responsibility is Shannon's because Shannon is the only girl. That's my point. 39, bad news and worse news. Shannon and Joey bond over their sense of relief at Maria's miscarriage. And then Joey confesses that he doesn't know what to do anymore. Shannon lets him off the hook because he's only 18 years old. Panic starts to creep in when Joey admits that he's not coming home and wants to call all of this stuff that's happening at home into CPS. Shannon spirals before bidding Joey goodbye. There's a lot to parse through in this argument, and I wish I felt better so that I could do it. But here's basically like the lowdown of this argument. Number one, Shannon is weighing the torment of what it is to be in a situation with domestic violence that she is sure is going to happen again, to the point where she's sure that she could be killed from this person, her father. She's weighing up the surety of the domestic violence that she is experiencing over the weight of the potential of being raped in a foster home. Because she's like, Joey, if you call this in, I'm getting placed in a home. You're going to get to go live your life with Aoife. Like, fuck you. No. So I get where like Shannon's anger is coming because Joey has been another person to perpetuate this excuse of not being able to get out of their domestic violence situation because they know that what happened with Darren, even though Joey and Shannon had a wonderful experience in their foster home, but because they know what happened to Darren, the potential of that has kept them all these years from calling CPS and getting the authorities involved. And now that Joey is 18 and can be responsible for himself and has a job, Shannon feels betrayed by this because she knows that the person that would be affected is her. And Joey has been one to perpetuate this story, so she's feeling like, why say all of this time when you're gonna go and do what you want to do anyway? So just like leave me to it then. Like, don't put me in a worse situation when you're not going to be impacted by the decisions that you're trying to make right now. And the fact that, once again, Joey is putting Shannon in a position where her autonomy might be stripped if this is something that he chooses to pursue. She feels helpless then, thinking about telling Johnny, because Johnny has told her multiple times, tell me what's going on and I will fix this problem for you. And she's like, I want to tell Johnny so badly. She's thinking in her head, Joey, bring me back to Johnny because Johnny will fix this for me. And then she's like, how could Johnny fix this for me? Joey doesn't even believe in you and he's giving up on you. So why would Johnny, this person who essentially is like a glorified stranger to her, somebody that she's like slowly becoming friends with, that she has feelings for, but that she doesn't think the feelings are reciprocated, and vice versa, by the way, obvious to everyone but the two of them. She feels so unworthy of him solving this problem because she's like, Joey's giving up on me. If Joey's giving up on me, it's not worth Johnny getting involved in. And then she really believes that Teddy will kill her. She's like, maybe next time Dad will just kill me. And then I'll be ridding you this problem that you won't have to step in and get hurt anymore for me on my behalf. Don't do me any favors. And I'll do Dad the favor of not having to get worked up in the first place. She really believes that her death or her absence from this family will solve more problems than if she remains alive. And that's sad because she's not suicidal and she certainly doesn't have a death wish, but she really has been so abused to believe that this is all her fault that she can't see that even if she was gone, the cycle is going to continue to perpetuate, right? Joey then says, like, I'm not coming back. And you can just tell by this fight and the fact that Joey is like starting to bow out on this promise that he's made to Shannon that he's never going to leave her in this bad situation. Promise watch in check. That how reliant Shannon is on Joey just emotionally to get through the situation that they're in. They're living in this hellhole together, but at least we're together. We have each other. It's just last episode where, Aoife was like, well, what are you going to do? And Joey was like, Shannon and I have each other, and that's it. So the fact that he is removing himself from that, he knows this is hurting Shannon. And then instead of being her protector, which is a role that he's taken on, and whether or not that's right, I don't think it's right that Joey has to be Shannon's protector. That's certainly not a responsibility that a brother 2 years older should feel like they have to do against their father. But he has taken on this role, and this is the role that he's played for her the majority of Shannon's life. Then delegates this responsibility of protecting herself to Shannon and says, the next time he touches you, you plunge a sharp knife into his heart. You kill him. And when Shannon's like, you're not coming in, he's like, if I go in, I'm going to kill them. So Joey can't be the one responsible to kill them, but Shannon can be the one responsible to kill them. Just saying. Make it make sense. Women are responsible for everything. Last chapter, okay. Lines and bulldozers. Johnny. A Johnny POV. Johnny gets no sleep worrying over Shannon and obsessing over the fact that he likes her and then hating the fact that he likes her. Desperate, he asks Gibbsy to stop him from bulldozing. The two have a very long chat about Johnny's last ejaculation, Shannon's complete lack of awareness of who Johnny is on a social rugby status, and why Johnny absolutely can't, according to him, date Shannon. Gibbsy suggests then, if you can't date her, just be her friend. Some important details from this chapter. Johnny says, I'd lost count of lads I'd played rugby with down through the season that had dropped out or lost form over a girl. So this is Johnny's biggest fear, that falling in love will jeopardize his dream and his career ambitions. And he's not right or wrong, but it's just a perception that he has. And Gibbsy points out in this chapter, the one drawing the lines in the sand, buddy, are you. You know that the age thing is bullshit. You like her. I'm not seeing what the problem is. So when Johnny gets all of this stuff off of his chest, Gibbsy's like, you haven't made a case against Shannon yet. You've actually made a case for Shannon. Why don't you just try dating her? And he's like, I I can't do this. And so like Gibbsy is like, take a page from my book, buddy. I can't either. I'm in love with Claire. She's my next door neighbor. She's been my best friend for however many years. She's my best friend Huey's sister. So I keep her as my friend, my very best friend, until the day that I decide that we can be together and have romantic context. I'll take a page from my book, buddy. He offers this and Johnny like noodles it over. Like, can I just be friends with this girl? And the reality is no, because Johnny is somebody who does something all the way or no way. He's already said, like, if you're gonna do something half-assed, like, why do it at all? And for Johnny, being Shannon's friend would be doing something half-assed. And Gibbs kind of points that out. He's like, well, if you're not going to date her and you have feelings for her, but you don't want to be with her, you're going to be okay if somebody makes a move. You're going to be okay if, McGarry makes a move on her. You're going to be okay if one of the other guys makes a move on her. And he's like, she's a beautiful girl. She's got interest. She's got eyes on her. So you're going to be okay with that? And Johnny's like, no, I'm not. And he's like, you should date her. Like Gibbs like tries multiple times throughout this conversation to like push Johnny to just accept his feelings for her and be like, you can't control this. This is not something that you can control yourself out of. He even says at one point, like, flex your impeccable self-control. And Johnny's like, I can't with her. And so Gibbs is like, don't you have your answer? Like, you're in love with her, man. Like, date her. Why don't you just see what this is like? And Johnny even says in his own internal dialogue earlier in this chapter, he's like, I like that I'm sort of losing control. I like that I want to rearrange things and put her in the center. And he really believes, for whatever reason, that he can't have both. Johnny has this fear and he won't let himself have this relationship with Shannon that he really wants to explore and like be 17 and have a real relationship and try to be somebody's boyfriend, but he won't let himself yet. And so he has Gibbs say to him, like, okay, I'm going to stop you from bulldozing. If I see you taking too many steps forward, I'm going to pull you backwards. Gibbsy knows full well that he's not going to be able to stop Johnny from doing whatever the fuck Johnny wants to do. And Gibbsy kind of wants him to have this relationship. He's pushing him towards it. He wants him to have something other than rugby. Johnny deserves a life of support and love outside of rugby. And everyone knows this but Johnny. Johnny derives his self-worth from his ability to play, and everyone else derives their worth of Johnny from like the way that he shows up for them. He's a good friend, he's a good son, he's a good student. Like he has so many more things going for him, and Gibbs knows this. And so I love that he's like pushing him to explore this new side of himself so that Johnny has something else to cling to of like, I'm good at other things besides rugby. There's a life outside of rugby, and part of that life is Shannon. So that is the end of our episode today. Let's crack open the burn book. We will look at the superlatives for this episode. The Bold and Bothered Award. This award is strictly for the Femme and the Furious. It goes to the moment that displays the most feminine rage, and it is Bella slapping the fuck out of Gibbsy, then slapping the fuck out of Johnny. Talk about feminine rage. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring, or the moment that is the most empowering, and it is Aoife buying the Lynch's groceries. The Femme Fatale Award, for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. Everything about the emotional intimacy between Johnny and Gibbsy. Their friendship defies the patriarchy in so many ways. They are not bros. They don't have that bro aspect. Sometimes they do because they're just teenagers and it comes across, but they are so vulnerable together. They are so honest with each other. They are so loyal to each other. I just love their relationship and the emotional intimacy and the depth of their relationship that they possess when they're together. Speak Your Truth trophy. Best quote or line. Joey says, "How my eggs coming along, chef?" Talking to Gibbsy. And Gibbsy says, "Faster than a whore at a brothel, good sir." A quote that I will be tucking away in my back pocket for use later in life. And then honorary heartthrob, because I'm just a girl, okay? And I want to talk about the most swoon-worthy moments. Johnny Kavanaugh holding Shannon when she cries, because that's what she asked him to do. Okay, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Femme and Furious. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share the podcast out with your friends, all that good stuff. If you have any thoughts, feelings, opinions, send me an email at femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. And if you want to vote on doing a recipe from Darina Allen's cookbook or voting on whether or not we should do Johnny Kavanaugh / multiple characters, whatever characters we're analyzing at a moment's charts, go over to the Patreon. I will be back on Tuesday with Binding 13, chapters 41 to 50. And until then, bye, Johnny.